For anyone who doesn't know me, my name's Anna Weber. I'm the Student Affairs Representative for the Society of Conservation Biology in North America, and I'm also a postdoc at the Florida Institute of Technology, where I study shark genomics and shark responses to climate change. Um, Welcome to our first webinar of 2024. We're excited to get the series going. So I'm going to start off just by giving a little intro for what our organization is about for anyone who may not be familiar, and then I will turn it over to our speakers who are going to go over different opportunities and things you should know about grant writing. Okay. Okay. All right. Can we all see that? Good. Okay, great. All right. So as I mentioned, for anyone who isn't familiar, this webinar is hosted by the Society for Conservation Biology in North America. So we are a society of students and professionals in the field of conservation. Our aim or our mission is to provide a venue to connect diverse students and professionals to advance and apply conservation knowledge, and to welcome, support, and empower all voices engaged in conservation to contribute to equitable solutions and catalyze wonder for the natural world. In other words, we're a really interdisciplinary and diverse society that really aims to bring people together from all different sectors and fields that are related to conservation, really in any way. So we end up covering a really broad area of topics. We aim to so we try to provide a lot of resources to our members. We host conferences in North America every 2 years, with our most recent one being this past year in Vancouver, and our next one in 2026 will be in Milwaukee. And then as at the global level of the society has several publications that they put out, and we try to support research efforts. And we also provide professional development opportunities, for example, these webinars. So if you want to learn more about SCBNA or you're interested in joining, you go ahead and scan this QR code. It can take you to our website just to get more information. So specifically, these webinars are hosted by the Student Affairs Committee, of which I'm the chair. So as a committee, we really work to provide resources and support for people who are early in their career, undergraduates, graduate students, postdocs, and also just early career non-students. We provide networking and professional development opportunities, both at our conferences and between conferences through webinars like this. Based on the interests of our members, we try to focus on technical skill building, career development, for example, like holding panel discussions and networking opportunities with professionals in their fields and experts. And we try to provide some social and networking events. Okay, so we have a good group of the committee right now, but we can always use more help. If you are currently a member of SCBNA and you want to be involved in this committee and helping to organize events like this and others, feel free to send me an email. We can put you on our mailing list and get more things done. So this is, as I mentioned, the first series or the first webinar of 2024. We have a lot planned over the next year. I think we have 10 or so webinars on our calendar. It's divided into 3 blocks. So the fall webinars are going to be focused on grant writing and job applications. And then we have webinars in winter that will be professional networking and career development. And then spring and summer webinars are going to focus on data analysis and skill building, like technical skills. So the remaining fall webinars, there's 2 more, one on academic job applications on October 30th, and then one that will focus on government job applications, specifically federal government. It'll help navigate like USA Jobs, the federal hiring website for the US, and GC Jobs, which is the federal hiring website for Canada. So today, as I mentioned, is focusing on general grant writing and grant opportunities through the NSF. So we have 3 speakers who we're really excited to hear from. First up, we have Eloise Cave, who'll talk about her experience as a PhD student working on grants. And then we have Carrie and Jane, who are both program directors in different areas of the NSF, who are going to discuss opportunities through their organization. Okay, and that is all I have. I think I'll go ahead and turn it over to Eloise to introduce yourself and say what you want to say.
Okay, let me see. All right. That should work in a second. There we go. Does that look all right? Great. Um, yeah, thanks for having me. Like Anna said, my name's Eloise. Anna and I are actually in the same lab here at Florida Institute of Technology. I'm towards the end of my PhD, so I am not an expert in grant writing, but I have gone through some of the larger grants and writing larger grants and mostly a lot of the smaller grants. So really my perspective here in this webinar is kind of this student PhD perspective on how to go about looking for grants and some of the little tips and tricks that I've kind of learned along the way, and especially for these smaller grants that even though they're small, they still can be kind of difficult to write because you just want to write your entire PhD in probably 1 or 2 pages. So I hope that I could kind of bring a little bit of a different perspective here for you guys and give you a little bit of tips. Um, so small student grants, you don't want to discount them, right? Everybody what loves to go for these really large NSF, for example, grants that can fund your entire PhD or your entire master's, even give you RA-ships and everything, and which are fantastic, but they are rare to get and they are incredibly difficult and competitive. These smaller student grants that can be acquired all over the place in all these different aspects, and I'll go into those in a little bit. You don't want to discount those. Those, if you get quite a few of them, you can actually fund partly, majority, or even your entire PhD, depending on what you're doing. So it can be an alternative way to fund your research. So maybe you want to spend a little bit of time focusing on maybe some large NSF grant like grants or in some smaller grants as well. But they also can allow you to kind of practice your writing and getting a head start on some of your content, especially if you're early on into your graduate degree. This kind of allows you to think about maybe your hypotheses, maybe your methods, and you might not be successful at the beginning, but all of that writing that you've done for some of these smaller grants eventually can kind of come into play later on to help you write some of the bigger ones or even write your thesis or dissertation. But these smaller grants, right? And I talk about smaller grants in the range between, 500 or something like that, 1,000, up to about $10,000 is kind of what I consider a little bit of small grant or student grants. If you get these small grants, they also demonstrate your ability to acquire funding, and you can show on your CV that you have the ability to write these proposals that are successful, and that you are able to acquire money to fund your own way, and that you're not just completely reliant on an advisor that might have money or maybe not have money and have their grants potentially be successful. So some of these small grants, you can find them all over the place, but they can be difficult to find. And I have some tips here on where and then how to find some of these smaller student-led or student-focused grants. Obviously, the first thing is just Google. Done that plenty of times. I come from the marine world where I focus more on marine conservation. So kind of use those little words to try to search for marine related student grants. And I kind of just go from there. If you're at a larger institution with a lot of resources, you might have a website or a department that might have already curated a list of grants for you. I have actually found this quite a lot in the different institutions other than my own, that they like to have lists and links and what they're specifically for. So if you can find some of those can actually be quite helpful to just go down the list and see which ones might actually apply to you. Then scientific societies. So, I mean, you've already started by SCBNA here. Scientific societies are great because they generally give these student research grants, and they are competitive, but not necessarily in the sense of you're going to compete with everybody else in the country. Let's say you're competing with people who are just members of your society. So those actually you could be quite successful. And don't be afraid just because you're belonging to one society. Don't be afraid to join a society to apply for their grant. I've actually done that plenty of times where I have found a scientific society and I know that they offer, student-led research grants, and I have gone and paid the membership dues, which sometimes can be quite low, just to go and apply for their research grants. Now, again, that can be, successful or not. So you just kind of have to weigh the pros and the cons. Do you want to pay for a membership? Sometimes they can be as low as $20 to get potentially maybe $1,000 back or something like that. So the scientific societies, just if you know quite a few, go into their websites. They should probably have a section for students to apply for little research grants like that. And recently, I've actually been able to find quite a few from zoos and aquariums and museums. So like the Miami Zoo offers a conservation fund. It's not specifically marine. It can be any type of conservation. The American Museum of Natural History offers various types of research grants that can fund your research, but not necessarily yourself, but can fund a large portion of your research. Something that I have actually been pretty surprised about is local clubs or companies or associations in your area. So like the Rotary Club or like a local fishing club. Companies I've actually found here in the middle of this picture, Zymo Research is a molecular company that offers a lot of products that you can think of that you use in a molecular ecology lab. They actually offer a molecular wildlife ecology grant. It's small, it's about $2,500, but it allows you to probably purchase supplies or use their resources or anything like that. So if you're in an area that has a lot of local communities or local clubs and like this, definitely look at those. They might offer a lot of outreach kind of grants as well, and kind of help with funding students specifically. Conferences. Conferences are a fantastic way to find what type of grants you might be eligible for, because you're going to these conferences that are probably within your area of expertise or what you're interested in, or maybe what your thesis or your master's or your PhD is going to be about. And you can see other people's presentations, but pay attention to their acknowledgments. Sometimes people will put up, this project was funded by such and such and such. They'll have a logo or they'll have a list at the end, and you can see, okay, well, here, let me take a picture of that slide and then go and research those potential funding opportunities. Some of those can be small student grants. Some of those can be much larger grants. It just depends. But I have done that plenty of times as well and have found quite a few of the grants that I've attempted myself. So that could be a really, really good place to look. Now, these last two might be a little bit unconventional. Social media. I've actually also found quite a lot of these local clubs and associations through social media. A lot of times I will go, let's say, on Facebook or Instagram, and I'll like a certain lab's page, and they'll congratulate their own student on getting a certain grant or a certain scholarship. And then that will trigger me to go and try to find and see if I'm eligible for that scholarship. So I've actually found quite a lot. If you see on my camera roll, I've got a lot of screenshots about things like this. So no discount social media. Probably not a lot of people use Facebook anymore, but it can be good for this type of thing. And one more actually. All right. The most least conventional way that actually I have also done and my lab mate has done is looking at other people's CVs. Sometimes more advanced PhD students or more advanced master's students will have online CVs or a website. You can go into their website, click on their CV, and go down to their section where they say acquired funding, and take a look at every single one that they have been able to receive. You'll find quite a lot of hidden, probably unknown funding just doing it that way. That's a little bit unconventional, but don't be afraid, don't be shy. They don't know you're looking at it, but you can definitely go and look uh, through there. So if you find something that you're interested in, you find a grant that you think you're eligible for, and you want to try to apply for it, what do you do? Well, the very first thing that you want to do is make sure it fits your research. Sometimes they have little fine print there that says this funding is only for field work, for example, and you may not do field work. You may do more computer-based stuff or anything like that. So you've got to really be careful what that particular funding opportunity offers. So make sure it fits what you want to do. You definitely want to understand what that grant is intended for and what they will fund. This is kind of where you have to have a little bit of a good understanding on what you want to do, what your research is going to be about, because some grants will say we only fund for this part of it, or like I said, for field work, and you might not be doing any field work, or you might have to fund they might not fund animal research or something like that, or direct animal research, so you just have to be really careful on what the funding is intended for, because other than that, you're just wasting your time if you're not eligible. Definitely look into their objectives. If you find an institution that offers good funding, go in to their website, read their missions, read their goals, read their objectives and what they're about, and you want to tailor your proposal to that. So definitely look into what their objectives and goals are. So for large NSF-like grants, you're writing pages and pages of what your proposal is going to be about. You might be proposing your entire master's or your entire PhD. So you have several chapters, 1, 2, 3, 4 chapters that go into these large grants. You can't do that with these smaller grants. The page limits are probably 1, 2, maybe 3 pages. And you just cannot fit everything that you want to fit necessarily into these small grants. So you definitely want to propose your probably a portion of your PhD or a portion of your master's, say a chapter or a couple questions. Other than that, it just becomes if you try to propose your entire dissertation, it becomes way too confusing. A lot of times, actually, most of the smaller grants, just because they're smaller, doesn't mean that you don't have to, they don't require a budget. Most of the time, they do require a budget. Again, because you're probably proposing between, I don't know, 1,000 and 10,000. You might not have a large budget or a large itemized budget, but they do require and they do want to know what you will be spending that money on. So if you do need a budget, obviously make it reasonable. Most of the time with these smaller grants, it does not include your salary like an RA. So you have to think what you're going to be using these funds to buy, whether it be some fieldwork material or laboratory material, or sometimes travel. That can be a hit or miss depending on the grant. They might offer that or they might not. So you just have to see what exactly they will fund and what is allowed to. Most of the time, these smaller grants will also offer guidelines. So it'll be specified in there. But grants say, a lot of times I've come across grants that say they fund, let's say, up to $10,000. And you say, great, I'm going to go budget $10,000. But you got to keep going and read because the average they fund could be around 5,000. So you want to say, okay, well, maybe I don't want to budget 10,000 if the average that they're giving out is around 5,000. You want to keep that budget around 5,000. And obviously this is depending on what you're proposing. If you think that your proposal is $10,000 worthy, then definitely go for it. But I myself, in my experience, when I have come across with these types of grants that they say they fund up to a certain amount, but the average is this, I have kept it to around the average, and I've been able to be successful that way. Look at what proposals they have funded. Sometimes they are going in there and say who are the winners of last year and what they have, what their project's about. Sometimes they'll have examples of the proposals that the successful applicants have submitted. So take a look at those and use those as your guide and use those as examples of how maybe you should structure your proposal or maybe type of wording that you should be using. So that's usually a really good idea, and it kind of helps you get started on how to go about and how to get started on some of these grants. I am not, like I said, an expert in writing these grants, but there are some little basic writing tips that I have kind of acquired and tricks throughout writing some of these some little smaller grants. Number one is keep it clear and it's not full of jargon. Most of the time, people want to sound smart, but when you start sounding too smart, it becomes way too confusing. A lot of the times for these much smaller grants, you might have a scientific committee that can read what you're talking about scientifically. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes if it's some of these local clubs, it could be people from the local community that might be reading these. So you definitely want to keep it clear and not full of jargon. This also ties back to kind of keeping it to maybe a question or two. That's actually my next point. And then you want to keep it to maybe a chapter of your dissertation or something like that. And then you want to keep 2 to 3 related research questions per grant. Actually, 3 might be pushing it. It just depends on how your questions are structured. That should kind of keep it pretty simple for a 1 to 2 pager. I really am a fan of using subheadings. Sometimes you'll come across these smaller grants that are maybe $5,000 to $10,000 that do require maybe like a 5-page proposal. And you definitely want to use subheadings if possible. Keep it separate, keep topics separate. It makes reading on the other end a lot easier. I have come across some small student grants that allow you to include figures. Sometimes this will cut away from your page limit or your word limit, but I highly recommend using figures if you're allowed. Whether that be a flow chart that you describe your methods or some kind of sample distribution, anything that helps that reader kind of visualize your study or your proposal. Like I said, for smaller student grants with a short page limit, keep it to a chapter or part of your master's. I kept this in here because Sigma Xi is a really good example of this. Sigma Xi has a very short page limit. I think it's about a page, and they allow figures. So if you are including figures, it still has to be a page. So it's a really fine balancing act that you have to do with Sigma Xi. They specifically, I have seen one of their how to get a grant videos, and they specifically say try to keep it to a chapter or a question. One of them is because Sigma Xi, you're only trying to get up to $1,000. So that's not going to fund your entire PhD. So why propose your entire PhD? And like I said, look into your funder's objectives, mission goals, and in this case, explain how and what you're proposing is in line with their mission. Every single granting institution, small grant institution, is going to have slightly different objectives. So you want to tailor your writing and what you're proposing to what they would like to see. So make sure you understand what their mission is, and that's going to get you a higher success rate. Use the same terminology. Don't be afraid to do that. If they have terminology in their websites that they use in their missions or their objectives, or in their grant guidelines, don't be afraid to use that kind of same terminology in their mission statement into your proposal. And this is actually a big one that I've come across is if you have received other sources of small funding, let's say you've received a $500 little scholarship grant or $1,000 here and there, don't be afraid to mention that in your proposals. A lot of people, I know in my lab, when I talk to some of the undergrads, they say that they're afraid to say that they have received funding, $1,000 here before, and that they're requesting for this funding because they think that, oh, you have funding. We're not going to give you this money. It's actually quite the opposite, I have found. If you tell or if you include in your proposal that you have received, say, $1,500 before from this other institution to pay for this part, then that shows that you this project is feasible. So you have acquired other money, and then so it's a little bit more accomplishable with the money that they will give you. Most of the time, you can write this into your budget or budget justification. If not, maybe you can work it into your text. But don't be afraid to include what other sources of funding you have received. Yeah. So a couple more points here. Clearly explain how each budget item is going to contribute to the methods. So this goes into your budget justification. You have to select your budget or your items carefully, and then definitely justify and explain how that item is going to help you accomplish the methods that you just described in your proposal. And this is a tip that a friend of mine actually gave me. Reread the intro over and over and over and over again to make sure it includes all the information that is required to understand why your research questions are being asked, right? A lot of times people can get lost in the introduction and sometimes put a little too much information that is not necessary. You just want to put just enough that gives the reader kind of context and why you're doing this or why you're proposing this research. And then also why you chose your budget items. Because that goes into, okay, how you're going to answer your questions with your methods. And actually, this is a tip not just for grant writing, but for any type of writing or scientific writing, write backwards. Come up with a clear research question. Explain your methods is probably the easiest thing to write. And keep them clear and concise and how you will answer those questions with the methods that you've described. Then provide a concise intro. That should be kind of the last thing that you're writing because that should kind of tie into everything that you have written after and just to give a little bit of context before that. It should include really only vital information. This can be difficult, especially with these smaller grants that are maybe a page, 2 pages. You really have to use your space wisely. So with these smaller grants, you actually don't get a lot of feedback. You will probably apply to it, submit your application, and then maybe in a couple months they say, hey, congratulations, you got it, or unfortunately, blah, 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 When you get a rejection, which is extremely common, even in these smaller grants. You might, but most likely, you might get some feedback, but most likely not. Sigma Xi is a really good example. They do give feedback if you go into the portal and look for it. This is an example. I have not had any luck with Sigma Xi, no matter how many times I've applied to it. But this is an example. It's really simple example feedback from Sigma Xi, just to give you kind of an idea of what the readers or what the grantors might be looking for. So most of the time it's a grading scale between 1 and 5 or whatever other number. But these are the kind of things that they're looking for, right? So a big picture, especially for Sigma Xi. If you're going to be going for Sigma Xi, this is a good example. Keep it big picture. They really like to see what are the big picture objectives that you're trying to accomplish. Have some really clear hypothesis and research questions. Like, I mean, very clearly written in there. Methodology has to be really detailed. The budget is obviously, sometimes it can be easy, but is the budget relevant to what you're trying to propose? And is it appropriate, right? Do you fall into the category of what they fund and how competitive it is? Sometimes they'll give you additional notes, depends on who's grading your proposal. So for example, here they clearly and specifically emphasize the big picture importance of this study. So that should go into your introduction. If your introduction is a little too detailed, that is not a big picture kind of thing. This is another example that my lab mate actually received. And here are actually quite a few things that I wrote down in my tips and tricks. Let me see if I can move this. So they will be pretty nice most of the time. So lacking in methodological details. So your methods should be very detailed. It should talk about maybe what tests you want to do and how they should answer or how they will answer your questions. A lot of times when you're starting out and you're in your first or second year, you might not know exactly how you're going to analyze your data. So you might put something vague for that part. Try to avoid that as much as you can. So look up some specific tests that you might want to propose. And like I said, breaking the text into sections with headings is actually something that they recommended. And hypothesis, right? You want to keep your hypothesis incredibly clear and how your methods are going to answer that, help you answer those hypotheses, and how your data can resolve kind of a problem here. So these are all little tips that a grantor gave to my lab mate to improve her proposal. And you can absolutely use these to resubmit probably the next year. One thing I like to do is keep a list, like a table of all of my small grants that I've applied to and arrange them by due date. So you can absolutely come back and take these comments that they gave you, this feedback, and reapply. This is the kind of table. It's a condensed form table that I've had just to show that even though you're applying to a lot of these grants, these small grants, you are probably going to be less or unsuccessful more than you are successful. That has been my experience, and obviously that's probably with any type of grant, whether it be a large NSF-like or these smaller grants. So this list is not exhaustive, but this is a list of every single small grant that I have applied to, with the ones in red, the ones that I've been able to successfully get. And even with this just like small amount that I've been able to get, I've been able to fund my part or almost half of my PhD. So don't shy away from a lot of these small research grants. I know some of these are marine specific. So if you're not marine, it might not help you, but definitely take a picture of this if you're interested in applying to some of these. But don't be afraid to just keep applying year after year. If you don't get Sigma Xi this year, try it again next year. If you don't get one of the grants that you applied to, try it again next year and just keep going and going through that cycle of that table of yours. Any questions? That's all I got.
Fantastic. Thanks, Eloise. I think we'll take maybe one question if there is one, and then I think we'll turn it over to Carrie, and then we can have like a group Q&A when everyone when all the speakers have gone. So if there's like one question for Eloise, we can take that now. Put it in the chat or just shout it out. Or if not, we can go ahead and move on to Carrie.
That was a gold mine of information, Eloise. That was awesome. Just gonna say. Let me see if I can share. Are you seeing what you should be seeing?
Yes, looks good.
Awesome. Thank you. So let me move you so I can see you. So thanks for inviting us. I'm Carrie Seagraves. I'm a permanent program director in the Division of Environmental Biology. I'm actually housed in the Population and Community Ecology cluster within that division. And I'm fairly new, so I've been permanent about a month. And so I'm happy to try and answer your questions, and I'm glad Jane's here as a backup. Let's see. So to start off, I just want to say I know navigating NSF can be a tricky process. So I thought I would talk about sort of the structure of the bio directorate and the important documents that you need to apply for funding at NSF, and then some of our funding opportunities, but it's going to be a really broad overview. So don't, you can always ask questions about details, but don't expect a lot of detail from this initial overview. So I wanted to start just talking about how we're organized in the Biological Sciences Directorate. So we have 4 divisions within my directorate. It's the Division of Environmental Biology, where I'm at, the Division of Molecular and Cellular Biosciences, Integrative Organismal Systems, as well as Biological Infrastructure. These divisions support research that spans all the way from molecules up to the biosphere. And so these different divisions cover sort of this range of scales. And iOS and DEB span from cells to organisms, populations, communities, and ecosystems. And we sort of touch on the biosphere. It's a nice goal to have, I think. But I just wanted to focus in on these 2 divisions because these are the bio programs that commonly support work in the conservation sphere. So if you focus in on the Division of Environmental Biology, we have 4 different clusters that support funding in our core programs. On the ecology side, those are ecosystem sciences and population and community ecology. And on the evolution side of the house, we have evolutionary processes and systematics and biodiversity science. So our core programs here at the top are really the bread and butter of each directorate. So these are the funding mechanisms that are ongoing. So you can count on these. In contrast, we also have special programs here listed at the bottom and some tracks that are actually nested within the core programs. And these tend to be more ephemeral. So they come and go and change with time because funding needs need to make adjustments through time. So in DEB, we support a lot of different special programs, and these are shared across the divisions within bio for some of these, and also with other directorates. And I'll talk about a few of these in a little bit. iOS has a similar structure. So there are actually 5 core programs here with behavioral systems, neural systems, developmental systems, physiological and structural systems, as well as the plant genome research program. And just like DEB, they also support special programs. And if you were looking carefully, you'd see that these are a subset of the special programs supported by DEB. No matter what kind of program you're interested in submitting to, NSF has a set of core documents that'll really help you in your application. And so I just wanted to talk really briefly about these, and I think Jane may also touch on them. The first of these is the Proposal and Award Policies and Procedures Guide, also known as the PAPG. This is really where you find all of the rules and guidance that you need to prepare a proposal and then manage an award after you get one. Solicitations here in the middle, these are, they give you the details on specific funding calls. So for example, they will tell you what that program funds, who to direct questions to, what are the eligibility rules, are there budget limitations, the special application procedures for that particular program, and then how much money is available. The last document here is a Dear Colleague letter, or a DCL. These are usually announcements about a topic area of focus for an existing funding opportunity. So these aren't usually specific funding calls, but they instead highlight research areas that NSF is keen to fund. And then within that DCL, they will list out the programs that are supporting funding on that topic area. So we have a number of funding opportunities that support researchers at all career stages from the undergraduate level up. I've shown these here. I think Eloise sort of mentioned these. So there's research fellowships for both graduate students and postdocs. And then the ones I want to focus in on are for new faculty. The first one is the BRC Bio program. This is unique to bio, and it really aims to build research capacity of faculty at non-R1 institutions. The projects should essentially help new faculty position themselves for future research and should enrich undergraduate research experiences. And these can cover any topic area in biology and are for faculty who are in their first 3 years of being in their position. The next one to talk about is a career. This is an NSF-wide activity. Career is for untenured faculty who are interested in integrating their scholarly and educational activities together such that they sort of feed into one another and create a synergy. So this program is really intended to help launch a professional career for faculty who will become leaders in their field and who value and integrate research and education. So in addition to the career stage oriented funding opportunities, I also wanted to mention 2 unique funding opportunities within our core programs that are called tracks. So tracks are just special categories of proposals within the core programs. The first one that I think might perk the ears of many of you is the STAR program, or the Special Targeted Awards for Research. This is unique to DEB, so you have to be applying to environmental biology to request these. But essentially, these support research activities that are narrower in scope and can be done on a budget of under $400,000. So this track might be appropriate for supporting graduate students and postdocs who could write such proposals. And the reason I say this is because that those projects might be a little bit more focused and also for shorter time periods. Another track in bio, so this is a bio core program level, is the INT Bio. It supports integrative research that considers basically how biological systems function and interact across different scales of biological organization. So it sounds kind of tricky, but essentially these are projects that are co-reviewed between programs within bio and or between bio and another program outside of bio. So sort of cross-disciplinary, if you will. Bio also has a number of solicitations or is involved in a number of solicitations that target specific areas of research. These programs are generally supporting larger collaborative projects with much larger budgets than our core programs. I just want to highlight a few of them that seemed more relevant to this particular audience. The first is the Partnership to Advance Conservation Science and Practice program. This is a partnership between NSF and the Paul G. Allen Family Foundation. And essentially, by having this partnership, it allows the program to fund both basic research and applied conservation actions at the same time. So keep in mind, NSF is, we're about funding basic research. And so normally we wouldn't fund applied elements. And so projects in this program integrate basic research and conservation planning so that the basic research informs conservation actions. And then the results of the conservation actions, once they're evaluated, should feed back into the research and sort of spur new research questions. This particular program also has a tools track. So it would be for the development of new tools or technology that advance biodiversity conservation. And I'm the DEB lead on this program, so I'm more than happy to answer questions. Another relevant program is Biodiversity on a Changing Planet. This one funds research focused on grand challenges in biodiversity science, and particular in light of the changes that our planet is experiencing. And NSF has partnered with several international agencies so that these projects can actually also include international partners in China, Brazil, and South Africa. Another similar program is the Organismal Response to Climate Change funding opportunity, where researchers integrate ecological and evolutionary approaches to basically understand how organisms are going to respond to climate change and how best we can mitigate any negative consequences of climate change. If you're interested in diseases, this program might be exciting. So the Ecology and Evolution of Infectious Diseases is a long-standing special program at NSF, and it focuses on bringing in ecological, evolutionary, and social views and sort of understanding how those factors together can impact transmission dynamics of infectious diseases. And this one also has a number of partners within the US, including NIH and USDA, and there are also international partners. The last one in this long pile of special programs is long-term research in environmental biology. This does exactly what it sounds like. So it supports projects for 10 years. But the catch with this one is you have to have a 6-year core data set in order to be able to apply for it. But essentially the idea is that it's addressing exciting questions that can only be answered by having long-term data sets. Sorry, my voice is giving out. It's been a long day of talking. The last section that I really wanted to talk about was Dear Colleague letters, or the DCLs, just to highlight a couple that might be of interest. The first is this DCL calling for projects that foster innovative use of scientific collections. Just to point out, NSF has made significant investments in collections and collections associated data over the last decade. And so essentially this call is to encourage submission of proposals that put those data to good use and fosters, novel research and education and training applications across STEM disciplines. The other DCL that is a relatively new one is Ultradata. To point out too that NSF has also made significant investments in the collection and archiving of long-term data. And those data have been used to understand long-term dynamics of populations, communities, and ecosystems. And so this DCL encourages proposals that use or reuse the data from environmental time series research. And you might be asking yourself about what are the kinds of data that this DCL might be considering. So I thought I would mention 2 resources that would be useful for anyone, particularly graduate students, postdocs who don't necessarily need to collect their own data. One such resource is the National Ecological Observatory Network, also called NEON. This is a series of 81 field sites that are spread out across the United States. At each site, they collect more than 190 data points and data products, rather, not data points. They have millions of data points per site. So they annually curate these data. They're made freely available to the public. They have tons of training resources that are online. They include workshops and courses on how to download and use the data. And alongside the NEON data repository is a biorepository that has samples that can be requested. And the samples are diverse, but like some examples are, they have things like soil microbe samples and ground beetles, and there are many things. It's definitely worth checking out. Alongside NEON, there's also the LTER network, or the Long-Term Ecological Research Network. It's like NEON. It's a network of sites that are located in different biomes across the US. And these sites have actually been conducting research for, some of the sites have been around decades, but some have been around like 40 years. And so all of these sites make their data freely available and could be used for to augment research projects that are ongoing, and or just for a research project of your own. You could get the data from NEON or LTER, do an analysis, and write up a paper. So I know that was kind of a whirlwind tour of opportunities available through bio. So you might be asking yourself, where do I fit in all of this? And how do I figure it out? So my advice is that you should reach out to a program officer and get some help. And the best way to do this really effectively is to begin by writing the one-pager. It's you'll hear this out of NSF folks if you ever talk to anyone. It's basically just a one-page write-up that lays out the ideas of your project, and it should include those 4 bullet points I put up under there. So you should have, what's the bigger picture? I'm going to sound like Eloise. Eloise just was talking about these things. So what's your big picture? What is the knowledge gap that you would fill with this research? Tell us what the hypotheses are, and what are the specific aims, and kind of what are the activities that you're going to do at a sort of broad level. Once you have your one-pager, you can send it to a program officer of the program that you think it might fit in, and they'll give you tons of feedback on the fit of the project to their program. They might have ideas about other programs in which it could fit. If you schedule a meeting to discuss the ideas, you can also get further details on the programs. You can ask questions. You can get advice on what the program is actually looking for in their funded projects. And last, and very importantly, be sure to follow up on their suggestions. This might mean that you need to reach out to program officers in other programs, or you might need to think about how to reframe your project a bit to better fit into a specific program. In addition to reaching out to a program officer, you can also become more familiar with bio through our regularly scheduled virtual office hours. These span a variety of topics. We often have ones on career and other new programs that are coming out. Additionally, we also have blogs that give short and informative updates on programs and things that are just happening at NSF. And you can sign up for these so that they come straight to your email and you don't have to seek them out. And then my last word of advice before I come to questions is, if you really want to learn about NSF's merit review process and become a stronger proposal writer, then you should sign up to be a reviewer. So we use both ad hoc reviewers and panelists to look over and review the proposals that we receive. And in doing so, what you'll do is you'll learn about the review process. You'll learn about common mistakes that are made in proposals, and it will give a give you a deeper view about the strategies that successful principal investigators use to write strong proposals. And to become a reviewer, it's a pretty simple process. Just reach out to a program officer in the programs that fit your expertise and tell them that you're interested, and we'll get you on our lists. I think that was all I had. If I can get this to forward. Yes. So I'm happy to take any questions. Well, a couple of questions, and then we'll have time at the end. Let me stop my share.
Well, I have a question, if nobody
Sure.
else does. I wanted to ask, for the NSF reviewers, are there specific qualifications that you look for people who want to review?
We look for folks with a PhD. Beyond that, expertise in the topic of the proposal. So we do try to find, particularly for ad hoc reviewers, they tend to be experts on that field, but we're always looking for young, early career folks to do reviews and get them into the system, because I strongly feel that that is a key way that you learn how to write a good NSF proposal, is by serving on panels, seeing proposals, and thinking deeply about them. So that's a great question.
I think we could maybe do one more if there is one, and then turn it over to Jane. Okie doke. Jane, you want to take it away?
Sure, thank you. Let's hope I can share without this going a little crazy on me. My dual screens do some very fun things sometimes. Are you seeing the slides in the, okay, excellent, because I have two views of them right now, which is a little scary. So thank you for inviting me, and thank you to the two prior speakers. You've really, it's been a ton of information, and Carrie, you've teed this up really nicely for me as well. My name is Jane Gardner. I'm a permanent program director in the biological oceanography program. So I'm over in the Directorate of Geosciences and in the Ocean Sciences Division. But we fund marine ecological work. So sometimes it's a bit tricky figuring out where to send proposals that are on marine topics. And hopefully I can demystify that for you a little bit today. Carrie's talked a little bit about the overall organization. NSF is organized into different directorates. I've got the two that you have representatives from highlighted in yellow for you here, but there are others as well that you might want to be aware of. And I've got a star on TIP, Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships. It's still a relatively new directorate. So lots of new things spinning up in that space that you may want to keep an eye on as well, especially if you are doing work that's sort of in between the fundamental and applied science. As Carrie's already mentioned, there are core programs, and as well as these cross-directorate programs, and she's touched on several, and I'll talk a little bit about the ones that Ocean Sciences and specifically BioOcean are involved in. NSF is just shy of a $10 billion a year agency. We've got about 1,500 employees. And a cool thing to know about this place is that programs are staffed by a mix of program directors, some of whom are permanent like we are, and some of whom are rotators. So they're borrowed from academia and borrowed from their regular positions. They come for between 1 and 4 years at NSF. And this is something I wish I had known about earlier on in my career. Just something to keep in mind for the future when you're down the line and you're fairly well established in a faculty position. It can be a great way to really learn about the science funding enterprise at the federal level and gain a lot of insight into how NSF works. The Geosciences Directorate has a number of divisions, so our structure looks a little bit different from what you see over in bio, but not totally different. We have divisions and then programs nested in there. We used to have sections; those have gone away here in Ocean Sciences. So we have 4 core programs, and then we still have an integrated program section that's largely dealing with our infrastructure investments in ships and submersibles and ocean observatories. Ocean education is still sort of half here and partially in the division of RISE, which is this new one at the bottom, Research, Innovation, Synergies, and Education. It's another one to keep an eye on as there's a number of new things that are kind of coming online as that division really gets up and going. It's only been around for about a year now. I'm going to talk about BioOsh as a program and also about the OCE postdoc research fellowships as two programs that might be pretty relevant to this group. So first about BioOsh, we're one of the core programs here at NSF. We're a little bit different in that we have a program description rather than a solicitation. Carrie did a nice job of talking about the different ways that we advertise funding opportunities, and it's often a little bit of a point of confusion when people come to the BioOsh website and say, where's the link to the solicitation? BioOsh doesn't have one. So we have a standing program description. It's really nice because it's stable over the long term. So our current one was renewed in 2023, I believe, but the prior one had been in place since 1998. So that gives you an idea of the sort of long-term stability of the description of the research that we're really interested in this program. If you go to any of the NSF program websites, they all are structured pretty similarly. And I'm going to point out a few key bits of information that are helpful to look for. So one is the list of program contacts. This is on every page with the program officers in that program and their email addresses, so you can reach out to us if you have questions about the program or about how your research might fit. There's also this upcoming due dates where it will tell you if there's a deadline for the program or a target date. Deadlines are pretty fixed. Target dates have a little bit more flexibility around them. If you don't make that date, your proposal may still be accepted, but it's just not a guarantee if you miss that date that it will be included in the next round of review. So that's the risk you run if it comes in past the date. BioOsh does not have deadlines. A number of programs at NSF have moved to a no deadline system. So we accept proposals on a rolling basis. You should submit when your project is ready to come in, and we sort of accumulate proposals in batches. And when we've got a sufficient number, we move them through the review process through panels. And I'll talk a little bit more about that a little later on in my presentation. At the bottom of these program web pages, you find these handy links that people very often miss or kind of overlook. So BioOsh has a whole other chunk of information here where it says additional program information. There's just a wealth of information there if you click on that link about what the program funds, some tips about the research focus of our program. The other thing that's really handy is that blue box that says browse projects funded by this program. I will admit that our database of awards, which is public and searchable, is really quite clunky. And unless you know exactly how to enter the information, and it isn't just keywords, it's often numbers that represent programs, and you might not even know what these are. It makes it really hard to find things based on a particular program. But if you go to the program's webpage, you go to the bottom, you click on that box, it auto-populates those search terms for you so that what is being returned are just awards funded out of that program or co-funded out of that program. So it's really handy for getting a sense of the range of topics that are funded out of a particular program, the sizes of the budgets that are typical in that program as well. If you click on that link for the additional information for BioOsh, it's going to bring you to a page with a bunch of info, but I want to kind of distill it down to a few key points for you. So BioOsh focuses on marine ecology and biological oceanography at the population to ecosystem level, and marine ecology pretty broadly defined. So relationships among aquatic organisms and their interactions with the environments of the oceans or the Great Lakes. Great Lakes are lumped in with oceans here at NSF. Other lakes are handled by DEB, so that's something to be aware of. It doesn't always seem like a necessarily organic split, but it has a lot to do with the size and scale of those lakes, the processes that go on there, and also with vessels that we support as well that are at that scale. Proposals that come into us should have a compelling ecological context and address topics that will advance understanding of marine or Great Lakes ecosystems. So we don't really directly fund applied work. So you can include implications for applied topics like conservation of an organism. They're really great as broader impacts. These are sort of the plus ones of the research work that you're doing. But if you're framing your research about it being really completely motivated by conserving an organism, for example, it's probably not going to be seen as a great fit here. So it's often how you present your research. If you're talking about ways that the work that you're doing is really going to advance ecological understanding, and then as an added benefit, it can help conserve an organism, that's how to make your research to fit here. So that primary intellectual motivation, it needs to be really clear that it's sort of fundamental science, because that's what we really fund at NSF. So it can be a little tricky figuring out where that best program is, right? So we've got ecology happening in a couple of places. And so again, Carrie has really solid advice there. I'll just echo that. If you're not sure, send a one-page proposal, a one-page summary of your proposal to program officers that you think, that are in programs that you think might be relevant, and we can help you sort out where the best home is. It's really hard to do that off of just a one-line topic. So really, please do send that one-page summary. It's really helpful for kind of assessing that. But freshwater aquatic systems work falls to DEB. When you get into estuaries and places where saltwater and freshwater meet, that's where you might want to really have a conversation about what's going to fall to which directorate. But if you're focused at the ecological level, populations to ecosystems, it's us. If you're really focused more at the organismic level and really focused on advancing understanding of that organism, it may fall to iOS. So again, a conversation in a one-pager is really helpful. We have a number of different types of opportunities that we support within BioOsh. Carrie's already covered a number of these. We support these as well, including standard proposals to our core program. We support careers as well as mid-career advancements. These are for when you're partway through your career. It's an influx to help you sort of boost your research productivity. Again, if you've had a period of heavy service, for example, which happens to a lot of folks in academia, it can take you away from research for a period of time, and it lets you kind of get going in a new direction again. We support rapids, which are quick turnaround proposals that come in response to an unanticipated event. Can be a natural or an anthropogenic event, but the key thing is that it's unanticipated. So you wouldn't be able to put in a proposal that would be reviewed on a typical timescale, which is about a 6-month turnaround for us. We also support EAGRs. These are early concept grants for exploratory research. The key thing with these is that they're high risk, high reward. So both RAPIDS and EAGRs are reviewed just within the program and not typically sent out to reviewers, because with RAPIDS, they're too time sensitive for that. With EAGRs, they're often so risky that they're unlikely to review well. So they have to be both high risk, but also have the potential to be really transformative, in our case, for the broader oceanographic community. We do also fund workshop proposals and RCNs on a limited basis, but we don't accept these unsolicited. So we encourage folks to reach out to us if they have ideas in these areas. A couple of opportunities that I want to highlight for you that are more broad than BioOsh, but at the ocean sciences level. One is our Ocean Sciences Postdoc Research Fellowships. The other is a new program within GEO called GeoEmbrace. And we also, and I'm going to touch on those in a moment, but we also do participate in a number of cross-directorate activities. Carrie's kind of covered these already, but these do accept marine proposals, and we do contribute to these out of BioOsh. So our Ocean Sciences Postdoc Research Fellowship, this is the landing page for that one. The target date for this year is coming up pretty soon. And I'll talk a little bit more about this one. It's a program that offers 24 months of support for a postdoc research fellowship. So we do encourage work that kind of crosses disciplinary boundaries, and that is going to further your professional development as the PI. You have to propose research that fits within OCE, but it can fit within one of these programs or kind of across these disciplinary boundaries. So we have a working group of program officers from the core programs within OCE, including our Ocean Science and Technology. This program is focused on development of new instrumentation that supports ocean research. So we accept proposals across this whole range of stuff. These are some of the program contacts, folks who are on the working group from these different programs, and then Tim Crone, who's our program lead. So you apply as an individual, which is a little bit different from the way most grant proposals come in at NSF, where the application is actually from the institution rather than from the individual. For fellowships, you apply as an individual. We'll notify you after the review process of the award recommendation. And then afterwards, what you do is you then transfer the award to the institution where you're going to be hosted. It is a little bit of a hoop to jump through to make that transfer, but what it allows then is that you are an employee of the institution. The institution can add fringe and indirect to make sure that you are then receiving benefits from the institution as an employee there. The other program I want to highlight is this new one called Embrace that just launched about a little more than a year ago. So this one is focused on non-R1 institutions and has a couple of different categories of proposals that can come in. Again, this one has a solicitation. So as Carrie pointed out, these have either target dates or deadlines for submission. See that the last one is May 15th, which means that we don't have a current solicitation for this program, though I think we're expecting it to continue. We don't have one out at this point in time. So it focuses on faculty at non-R1 institutions. You can propose either a seed or a growth proposal. It allows, under a seed proposal, 2 years of support to get a new research or education program off the ground at your own institution, or to build or catalyze a partnership or collaboration with another institution or within your own institution. So it can facilitate some partnerships between non-R1 and R1 institutions, for example, or with organizations outside of academia, or any combination of that. Growth proposals provide 4 years of support that establish independent research programs. So you can use the funding towards support for students or postdocs. A little bit different from many of the other types of support. You can propose summer course buyout or sabbaticals to give you more time to be able to focus on research, as well as other typical research expenses. So these are open to anybody who's at a non-R1 institution. So R2s, small institutions, MSIs, PUIs, all of those categories are eligible to apply. So a little bit about how to find funding opportunities, because NSF can be a little bit overwhelming. We have a lot of different programs and opportunities here. If you go to our main program page, it looks like this, and you'll see a number of different links across the top. You can click on one that says find funding and apply, and it gives you this handy drop down of links that then are by career stage, for example. So if you're a postdoc or you're a grad student, you can see these links in this column over here on the left. And you can click on that and it'll take you to opportunities that you could be eligible for, that you would be eligible for based on your career stage. And you can kind of filter for there based on the topic you're interested in. You can also come at it by topic. So you can click on the box that says focus areas, and it'll give you more of a topical kind of drop-down list, and you can search that way as well. When it comes time to prepare your proposal, this tome is the thing you'll want to pay attention to. It gives all the rules, the in and out. It is reasonably searchable, and the HTML version is pretty user-friendly in terms of sort of figuring out some of the things that are allowable and not. The other thing you want to pay close attention to is information on NSF program websites, because it can highlight some key points for you as well. The information in the program descriptions, the solicitations, or the DCLs. So solicitations will have typically solicitation-specific criteria that you need to meet, in addition to the typical criteria that we review, which are intellectual merit and broader impact, and I'll talk about those a bit more in a moment. Great resources as well are your colleagues, your mentors, your institution's Office of Research Support. It's quite literally those folks' job to know some of these rules about applying for things. So they are a great resource to help you with some of those, the nitty-gritty about getting a proposal in. And we do have a number of opportunities, webinars, office hours, programs offer these, and typically the information is linked to on the program's webpage. So that you can attend those and ask questions. And please don't be shy about reaching out to program officers as well. So what happens next after you submit? NSF's merit review process involves external review. Programs differ a little bit across NSF. Some use ad hoc review only, some use panel review, and some use both. So BioOsh uses a combination of both ad hoc review and panel review. The first step when a proposal comes in is that we check it for compliance. So basically, we're making sure that you've followed all those things that you need to be doing, that all the documents you need are there, things that you can't have are not attached, for example. And because BioOsh doesn't have deadlines, if we find a problem, typically what we're going to do is ask you to fix it. And it wouldn't necessarily require you to resubmit. You can actually just go in and do a file update and fix the thing that isn't working, and then we'll move it through the review process once it's compliant. That process takes a few weeks typically, and then your proposal will move into the review phase. We send proposals out for ad hoc review. Our strategy here in using both is that we cover quite a wide variety of topics. As you might guess, marine ecology is a broad topic. So we often are seeking really specific expertise or expertise in particular techniques or ideas in the ad hoc reviewers that we reach out to. We get about a 50% return rate of people who will actually return a review. So we ask about 10 and hope we get about 5 or sometimes a little bit less in our ad hoc reviews. Then your proposal goes to a panel review where we'll have between 1 and 4 panelists that read the proposal. Our lead panelist in BioOsh will also submit an ad hoc review. So if you get feedback on a BioOsh proposal, one of those ad hoc reviews is from a panelist and the rest are from external reviewers typically. And then our panelists have access to those ad hoc reviews as well after they've turned in any reviews that they need to submit. And so they take all of that information, read your proposal carefully, read the opinions of other reviewers, and then they come together for about a 15 to 20-minute discussion of the main points in your proposal, the main strengths and the main weaknesses, and then they'll give it a rating. That information all comes into the program, and it's at the program level that we make a recommendation to either award or decline the proposal. But the official decision does come from our Division of Grants and Agreements. So they make those awards. We look at all proposals for 2 merit review criteria. One is intellectual merit, the other is broader impacts. So we're looking for high quality research. It's technically sound and has the potential to advance knowledge in the particular field. Broader impacts contribute more broadly to achieving societal goals. Some of these are through the research itself, and others can be activities that are related to the work that you're doing. Common ones are things like training students in the work that you're doing and offering research opportunities for them as part of your project. Conservation outputs, management outputs, those are some common ones that we see in BioOsh as well. And if you're applying under a specific solicitation, there will be typically solicitation-specific review criteria. So you should take a close look at that solicitation or chat with program officers about those as well. So when it comes to the decision-making part with program recommendations, we're taking all of the information into account. We look at all of the written materials, the ad hoc reviews. You get a summary of that panel discussion as well that the panel prepares. And for us, the content of the reviews is more important than the rating. So when you're reading these, the feedback that you get, don't get too bogged down if you have one that sort of sits differently from the rest or is a little inconsistent in terms of the rating with the feedback that you've received, because we're really paying more attention to the content than we are necessarily to that actual rating. We'll consider the panel ranking. And then we'll also consider, we also do our own analysis of the fairness and the substance of all of those reviews, of any concerns that have been brought up, technical concerns, and whether those are major or minor. We do typically have far more competitive proposals than we can ever possibly fund with the budget that we have. And so then we start looking at things in terms of having a very balanced portfolio. And so these are some of the criteria we think about there: breadth of topics and areas, the broadening participation components of the work that's been proposed, making sure that we've got diversity in terms of the institutions that the awards are going to, those that are really doing a great job of integrating research and education, and logistics are sometimes a concern as well, especially with BioOsh. Sometimes people are proposing large amounts of ship time and it's on a really tight schedule and it's just not a thing that can happen. So that sometimes does factor in as well. I also wanted to just highlight that there are some opportunities for early career folks to come and work at NSF. A couple of the common ways that people come to OCE are through NOAA Sea Grant Canals Fellowships. Elaine Shen is our current Sea Grant Fellow. I think her term is ending shortly, and we will have someone new hopefully coming on board next year. But we've had a lot of great folks join us through that program. And some have stuck around a little longer than a year. So Amelia is actually still with us. She was our Canals Fellow last year, and she's currently working as a policy assistant in OCE. We also have triple AAS fellows, that Science and Technology Policy Fellows that come to NSF as well. I think those are typically 1 or 2 year stints. And then you can also find a number of opportunities that are advertised either through the NSF website, sometimes for temporary things, they're through there, and the permanent positions are always on usajobs.gov. I've got a lot of links of helpful information. I'm not going to go through these, but they're available to you. I think we're able to make our slides available to you as well, so you can link out to these directly, but lots of information about the review process and how to sign up for getting information about new funding opportunities. And I'd be glad to take any questions and just get out of the presenter view here and stop sharing. Oh, I love how my buttons move around every time, the dual screens. There we go.
So
All right.
I was going to say at this point, I think we can take questions for Jane or for any of our other speakers. If anybody has anything, we could just open the floor for general discussion. But thank you very much again to Carrie and Eloise and Jane. I think this was a really useful session. I think the session has been recorded, so we are posting it to YouTube hopefully soon, Bernie. Yeah, cool. All right. Okie doke.
All right. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.